guys, welcome back for episode number 105 of the weekly playback. I have 3 new to me games to talk about today, so I'm super excited to talk about them. But before we begin, first I would like to ask you guys if the video quality seems okay to you. To me, when I watch the video back after it's been uploaded, it just seems super bright and like fluorescent and like blinding to me. Let me know, because when I'm editing it, it doesn't seem like that, but I feel like whenever it's been uploaded, then it just seems super bright on my computer screen. So I just want to, get some feedback on that. Let me know if it seems too bright or fluorescent or whatever, and I will try to play with my light settings. I'm actually trying to do that today, so I have them a little bit lower than I usually do to see if that will make it seem less bright once it's on YouTube. So anyway, so if you have any feedback about lighting or sound quality, just let me know and I will always try to make it better, within my limited technological means to do so. So anyway, let's get started. Let's talk about Harmonies. This is a 2024 game for 1 to 4 players designed by Johan Benvenuto, and the artwork is done by Maeva da Silva, and it's published by Libellud Games. Now this is a token drafting game and a pattern building game, and it is super fun. I played 2 games of this last night and I really enjoyed it. It is very easy to learn, though probably difficult to master. So you are going to have this board, and this is always going to be pointing to the first player of the game. You are going to take out 3 tokens randomly to place on each of these circles. And then you are also going to have a market of animal cards. You will always have 5 cards face up. And these will have different patterns on them that you are trying to complete. So you can play the easy version of this game, the basic version, or the more advanced version. So this board has 2 sides. This is the more basic board, and then this is the more advanced board. And there are also different spirit animals, so it's recommended for your first game you do not play with these. So I will talk about those at the end and how it just changes up the game a little bit. I did play both the basic version and the more advanced version, so I will talk about both. And honestly, they're not too much different. So you are always going to have 5 face-up animal cards available. So on your turn, you must do the mandatory action. The mandatory action is always picking up 3 cubes from one of these 5 circles and placing those, tokens, and placing those tokens immediately onto your board. There are a few rules that you have to follow, but not too many rules about token placement. Like, for example, you do not need to place tokens adjacent to each other. So you are going to be constructing different kinds of structures. So you are going to be making trees, mountains, fields, and buildings and water. So trees are composed of brown with a green on top of them. So trees, they can be taller than this. So you can have a level 1 tree, you can have a level 2 tree, and you can have a tree that's like a level 3 tree, and they will be worth different amounts of points at the end of the game. Brown by itself without the green on top is not going to be worth anything. Mountains are composed of stones. So you can have level 1 mountains, you can have level 2 mountains, and so on. And mountains need to be connected to other mountains in order to score at the end of the game. Fields are just composed of 2 or more yellow pieces which are adjacent to each other, and you will get 5 points for each field you have. So you want to try to spread out fields on your board. And then buildings are basically composed of a red top on top of either a brown or a gray or another red. So buildings can look like this. So you can have a red on top of a red to be a building. You can have a red on top of a brown to be a building, or a red on top of a gray to be a building. And those will always be 2 height. So a building will always be composed of 2 tokens. And then finally, you have water. Water is always going to be a level 1, and in the easy version of the game, you will be forming a river. So you'll want to have like a long section, just one long continuous river in order to score. And you're always going to score. So you'll count the number of tokens from one end of the river to the other by the shortest path. And then depending on how many tokens your river is comprised of, that will determine how many points you get. In the advanced version, I will talk about how these water tokens work. So on your turn, you are always going to select 3 tokens from one of these circles and then place it onto your board, and you are trying to fulfill different animal cards. So you are going to look in the market and then see which animal card you might want. You have space for only 4 animal cards above your player board. So let's suppose I decided to take this animal card. Now I am immediately going to place 3 cubes on top of this animal card, and these are animal cubes. And once I have fulfilled the requirement, this pattern somewhere on my board, I will take the bottommost cube and place it onto the tokens which are shown. So you will place the cube onto that specific token. Now you can use these pieces in order to fulfill different elements of animal cards. However, suppose that this animal card, because it requires the cube once it's completed to be on top of this water, if there's another animal card which requires the cube when completed to be placed on top of a water, for example this one, then you cannot use that same water to complete this pattern because it already has a cube on top of it. So that is the restriction with animal cards. So you can definitely use pieces to complete multiple animal cards, different kinds of structures, but not only if they do not have a cube on top of them. If there's a cube on top of it, it can be used to form some other element of an animal card. So for example, this one. So let's suppose I completed this and I had a cube on top of this water. Because this kind of habitat does not require a cube on top of the waters, it'll require a cube on top of a mountain. I can easily use these 2 waters to form that part of this structure and then just put a mountain down here and then place the cube on top of the mountain. So you are trying to pick animal cards that will hopefully work well together with each other, so that you will be able to fulfill many different patterns and fulfill as much of your animal card as you can, because the more of the cubes you are able to place, the more points you will get. So for example, if I only placed 1 cube, then obviously I'm going to get 9 points. But if I manage to place all 3 cubes from this animal card, I will get 15 points. So you can only have 4 animal cards above your board at one time. And once an animal card is completely completed, so you've removed all of the animal cubes from it, then you can put it off to the side, and then you'll have room for another animal card. So on your turn, you are always going to take a set of 3 tokens, and then optionally you can take an animal card if you have room for an animal card above your board, and optionally you can place an animal cube, and you can do them in any order. So for example, if it's your turn, before you decide to even take some new tokens, you might decide to take an animal card, or you could take some new tokens from this board and then place them and then fulfill an animal card. And if it's completely fulfilled, you can move it to the side, and that might open up a new space for you, so you could select a new one. So you can do your actions in any order you choose. So the game will continue like this until game end. So game end is triggered if there are no more cubes, sorry, not cubes, tokens. If there are no more tokens to draw from the bag in order to add to the main board, or, so let's see, yes, the pouch is empty when you need to refill the central board, or at the end of your turn, there are 2 or fewer unoccupied spaces on your personal board. So it says, if necessary, end the current round so that all players have played an equal number of turns. And that's why this is always going to be facing towards the first player in the game. At the end of the game, tally points for your landscapes that you have created and the animals you placed. So at the end of the game, again, you are going to look at your scoring player aid and determine how many points you get for the different landscapes you have. So again, trees will score based on the height of the tree. So you will get the points indicated based on how tall those trees are. Mountains will only score if they are adjacent to at least one other mountain. And then depending on how tall they are, you will determine how many points you get. So if you have a mountain by itself, even if it's a level 3 mountain, you're not going to score any points for it if it's by itself. Each field you have, which is comprised of 2 or more yellow tokens, will score 5 points. So you definitely want to have fields separated. And then buildings will only score if they are adjacent to 3 different colors, and that different color can also be a red. So if it is not adjacent to 3 different colors, then it will get 0 points. But if it's adjacent to at least 3 distinct other colors, so like for example, red, green, and yellow, then you will be able to score that building. And each building will be worth 5 points. And then finally, you're going to look at your river and see how many points you get for your river based on the number of tokens that it is made up of. Now, if you're playing with this side of the board, instead of having a river, what you're going to be doing is trying to create islands. For each section that you have created, each island, and so the blue border is used as water. So for example, you might be able to put blue tokens here and that will create an island here because there's water around it here. So you are trying to create as many islands as possible. And for each island you have, you will get 5 points. So that is how the advanced side of the board works. Now the spirit cards don't change up the game a whole lot. So at the beginning of the game, you will be dealt 2 cards and you will decide which of the 2 cards you want to keep. And on top of it, you will have a spirit cube, which is a clear colored cube rather than the amber colored cube. So once you have completed the structure on your spirit animals card, you will place the cube on the indicated spot in that structure. And now you will unlock a special scoring bonus. And your scoring bonus will be indicated here. So each spirit animal card will give you a scoring bonus of some kind, and the rulebook specifies what the different scoring bonuses are. So for example, I had an animal, a spirit animal, which for each river piece, for each water piece, I would get 2 points, which was really nice. And these will count as one of your 4 animal cards that you are limited to until you fulfill it and move it off to the side. And then of course you will try to fulfill your scoring bonus, and in order to get those mega points from that card. So it doesn't change up the game a whole lot. It doesn't make it super complicated. Like I said, it's a really easy game to learn. The only difficult part is mastering it, like trying to pick the cards that you know will work together well for you to complete as many of the animal for you to place as many cubes as possible so that you can fulfill as many animal cards as possible. So yeah, so super easy to learn, but difficult to master, and I really enjoyed it. For me, it felt like a combination of the games Reef and Cascadia, but I think I like it better than both of them. So yeah, so if you enjoy games like that, then I would highly recommend this game, Harmonies. So yeah, and there are different numbers of different, so the different tokens in here, there's a different amount of each kind. So some of them will have more than the others. So I can tell you the token distribution if you guys are interested in hearing about the token distribution. So there are 23 blue tokens, which are water tokens. There are 23 gray tokens, which are the stone, so the mountain tokens. There are 21 brown tokens, which are the tree trunks. There are 19 green tokens, which form the tops of the trees. There are 19 yellow tokens, which are the fields. And then finally, there are 15 red tokens, which are the buildings. So the red is, of course, the fewest amount of tokens you have. So depending on which types of cards you pick, you're obviously, like, for example, if this card, it's red bordered, so it's going to go heavily on buildings. So these cards, they all have a different color border so that you know which kind of tokens it will want the most of, which, is just nice to be able to take a look at first glance. So for example, these llamas, they want fields, so it's a yellow border. Or this bird, it wants mountains, so it's a gray border. So you're going to see, at first glance, which tokens a card is going to want the most of. And yeah, so really easy to learn, difficult to master, and I really, really enjoyed my 2 plays of this yesterday. So I highly recommend Harmonies. And this was not a review copy. This was a copy that I purchased from Board Game Bliss in Canada. As soon as I saw it was available, I jumped on ordering it. So yeah, so that is Harmonies. So let's move on. Another game I played recently is Hidden Ark. So this is a game designed by Tobias Hall, and the artwork is done by Angela Rizza, and it's published by All or None Games. And it is for 1 to 4 players. So this is a review copy which I received at Essen. So this is an interesting game in which you are going to have point-to-point movement, and I'm going to have to throw up pictures because the board is a little bit large, but I will show it to you right now. So the board is double-sided, so you can choose which side you want to play with. So for example, you can play with the world map as we know it, or you can play with kind of like the Pangea map, which I think is what it's called. So we played with this side, and where you see the circles, you are going to have certain, is where you're going to be able to place your research stations. And where you see the squares is where there's going to be fish tiles. And you might not be able to see them, but there are some light circles here. And on those light circles, there are going to be point tokens. Which if your ship, reaches that area, then you would be able to get a point token. So each player is going to have a board that looks like this. Oh, and it looks like we did not pop out the tokens here. So someone, I think that this was not my board, but this was someone's board when we played, and I guess we forgot to pop out the tokens and put them back into the bag. But basically, you are going to have these action tracks, and you're going to be collecting various tokens, which you will be using to enhance the actions that you will be taking. And there are different resources which you will be keeping track of, because these resources you will need, like for example, money you'll need in order to build stations and put out more ships. You'll need technology in order to capture certain types of fish, and then these various resources in order to capture various types of fish. So this is a conservation game. So the premise of the game is that, let me see if I can find the premise, but basically the premise is that you are basically an environmentalist trying to save certain types of endangered species of fish. And whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game will win. So basically, you are going to set up the board as indicated, put out all the fish tiles. So there are a number of different fish tiles, and they belong to different areas. So you will always place them in the matching square. So for example, the green outline will have fish of the green type. So here are like green fish, and on each fish you will see what is required in order to capture it. And this will give you that's going to be how many points it's worth. And this will give you a constant upgrade, a permanent upgrade that you have. So subsequently, if you need to capture a fish that uses the pink token, you will always permanently have a pink token. And then each fish will also tell you, it's going to be a little bit hard for you guys to see, but in text over here, it will tell you whether it's endangered, critically endangered, or, I think that those are the only two. Critically endangered or endangered. There might be a third category, which I'm forgetting right now. So there are different categories of fish. So the fish belong to different areas. So, there's going to be different bonuses that you will be trying to fulfill based on how many different types of fish you get, whether that's from different areas or certain fish, like a number of fish of a certain type, and so on. So each person's board is going to start out with, your personal board will start out with the research stations placed here, and then you'll have 3 ships. So you start out with 1 research station and 1 ship on the board, and you will optionally be able to build out other research stations and more ships, and that will cost you money. So the first one will cost you 3 million for a research station, the next one will cost you 5 million, and the last one will cost you 7 million. And at the end of the game, for each research station excuse me, you have placed on the board, you will get 5 points. Excuse me. The first ship you build will cost you 2 million, the second one will cost you 3 million, and the last one will cost you 4 million. And for each ship you built on the board, you will get 3 points. And then, okay, I'll go into scoring a bit later. But basically, let me just talk about how the game works. So this bag is going to be filled with different types of tokens. Some of those tokens will give you something immediately, and some of them you'll be able to upgrade when you add to your board as an upgrade when you do the upgrade action. So for example, this green leaf, if you can see, it has a wrench on it. So that means you can, when you collect this token, you can put it to the side of your board, and when you do the upgrade action, you will be able to add it to your board at that time. And I will talk a little bit more about how that is done. However, if you manage to get this token, which has a lightning bolt symbol on it, that means you will immediately go up 3 spaces on this track with your cube. So at the beginning of each round, you are going to select one token. There's always going to be 4 tokens out on the table. You will randomly draw one and then decide which of those 5 tokens you want. If you decide you don't like any of those 5 tokens, you can randomly draw another token from the bag, but then you are forced to keep that token, and then you have to discard one of the tokens that is on the table. So that is the first thing you are going to do at the beginning of every turn that you take. So you will always get these tokens. So, you know, because otherwise it would be difficult and the game would be super duper long and it would just not move along at all if you didn't do this at the beginning of the turn. So you will always get something, and you do start the game with a certain amount of resources. So everyone is going to start the game with 1 pink, 1 blue, 1 green, 1 technology, and 3 million in money. So you start the game that way. And at the beginning of the game, you will also pick some tokens to start at the beginning of the game. So on your turn, what you're going to do is decide which action you want to take. So the actions are to build. This action, you would place your action cube on top of it. So building is when you build either a new research station or a ship. So you need money in order to do that. However, if you had previously upgraded it and placed something in your build column, when you take the build action, you first adjust all of your cubes for what you have here. So here you see that you have a money. So when you take the build action, you would first increase your money by 1 because that is what this token tells you to do. So that is the build action. You cannot take the same action 2 times in a row. So on your next turn, you would not be able to take the build action unless you pay a certain number of resources. That is the only way you can do that. This is the ship action. So that allows you to move your ship and or capture. So you can move your ship 1 space plus an additional ship for every ship you have out on the board. So if you have 3 ships on the board, that gives you 1 plus 3, so 4 total movement. And then you can decide to either capture a fish if you manage to reach a fish, or you can take 1 additional ship movement. So again, when you take this action, because there's all these upgrade cubes in it, you would also do all of these as well. So this person, they would get to bump up their pink and yellow tracks. They would get an additional 2 ship movements whenever they do the ship movement because of these 2 cubes that they have here. And this one would give them an additional technology. So they really, completed their ship movement track. I believe that this game board belonged to the winner of the game, if I'm remembering correctly. So that is the ship movement action. So when you reach a fish, so you can only move adjacent, you can only move orthogonally adjacent, so you can't go diagonal. So your ship cannot go from here to here. So 1 movement is of course going from 1 square to another. If you land on a fish, you can stay on that fish and you're basically reserving it. So if you're not able to rescue that fish in the time that you reached it, or for some reason like you don't have the resources to rescue it, you can stay put on that fish. Other people can pass through that fish, but they cannot rescue it because you got there first and you are on that fish. So basically, the movement action allows you to move and rescue fish. This is the upgrade action. This is where you can take tokens that you have reserved on the side of your board, which you had collected either at the beginning of your turn or by reaching certain locations on the board. So whenever you build somewhere, so whenever you build a research station, there's going to be a token here. So you will get to take that token and do whatever it does. So if it's immediate, you would immediately bump up your resources, or if it's an upgrade token, you would add it to the side of your board. So that is one way to get tokens. Another way to get tokens is if certain fish are not collected, rescued, and you need to replenish the board, the remaining fish on the board will have a token placed on top of them as an incentive for people to try to rescue those fish. So the tokens you've collected during the upgrade action, you can now decide to place them in various columns on your board. So the first one you place will always be free, and if you decide to place another one, it will cost you money. And you will notice that each of your rows has a cost for the upgrade tokens, and the upper level ones are free. So it makes sense for you to place your free one on the expensive bottom spaces. And then if you have to then pay for a token because you have, say, 2 tokens that you want to place in one upgrade action, then you can place those in the above areas, which are free anyway. So again, you can see the cost and you can see how the top areas are free. So again, when you do the upgrade action, it makes sense for you to place your free one in one of the areas that cost a lot of money, and then the free token that you get to place, actually the one that you have to pay for, you will place in one of the free spaces on top. So that works out nicely. So that is the upgrade action. And of course, when you upgrade your board, you will also again look at any of your tokens here and activate those as well. And then finally, this action is not done as much as the others unless you desperately need it, but it basically lets you bump up 3 on any track that you want. So if you are desperate for resources and you just haven't been able to get them for whatever reason, that is what that lets you do. So let me just show you some of the different tokens. I think you've seen quite a few of them on this board. So for example, this one will let you bump up 3 immediately on the green track. This one is a free fish rescue. So again, whenever you take the movement action, you get to move and or move an additional space or rescue a fish. So if you have this token which looks like a poker chip, and let's suppose you had placed it in your ship area, that would basically allow you 2 rescues if you can manage to get to 2 different fish and rescue 2 fish then. So that is what that token means. This one is technology again, so certain fish will require technology for you to rescue them. And yeah, so I think I've shown you all the different types of tokens. And again, throughout the board, in areas which are farther on the board, there are going to be these 3-point tokens. And if your ship happens to pass through them, you get to pick up this token, and it's basically just worth 3 points at the end of the game. So let me just talk a little bit about game end trigger. So again, when there's a certain number of fish left on the board, you will refill the fish. So when there are only 4 fish species tiles left on the game board, or 5 if playing with 3 players, or 6 if playing with 2 players, and 7 if playing solo, then you immediately take down face down opportunity tokens, because these are all called opportunity tokens, and you are going to place them onto the remaining fish on the board. And then you will refill the board, okay, with other fish tiles. So game end. Okay, so you're going to do a refill 2 times. The 3rd time it occurs, it instead triggers game end. So you are not going to refill the board once you hit the tile, the tile limit that would normally trigger a refill. Instead, you will trigger end game. So you will continue playing until it's the first player's turn again, and then play 1 final round, 1 turn each, starting with the first player, and then you will go to game end scoring. So again, game end scoring. You will get 3 victory points for each of your ships and 5 for each of your sign stations that you built on the board. And this does not include the one that you start the game with. So everyone starts with a station and a ship on the board. It does not include that. You will get victory points for your fish. So again, each fish has victory points on it, so you will get points for that. You will get victory points for any victory point tokens that you collected. You will get 1 victory point for every 4 resources you have left over. And then you will get victory points for award tokens. So there are award tokens available. So the person who has the most of a certain type of fish will get the first the highest number of points. So for example, if you were the person who had the most bluefish, you will get 7 points, and then the second person would get, I guess, 5 points, and the last person would get 3 points. So each fish species is going to have a tile associated with it. So each color has a ribbon associated with it. So if you have the most fish of that species, you will get points. And then you have these ones. So if you have the most critically endangered fish, you will get the maximum number of points, and then so on. If you have the most endangered fish, then you will get the maximum number of points, and so on. And if you have the most vulnerable fish, you will get the maximum number of points, and then so on, based on who has that. And then finally, if you are someone who managed to collect all different fish species, you will get this award as well. So everyone who managed this will get this, I believe. So those are the awards, and then whoever has the most points will win. So it is a really fun game. Like, I honestly, so I'm going to be super honest, I wasn't sure I would enjoy it that much, but I enjoyed it so much. Like, just by the look of this game, I was like, okay, you know, it's got an interesting premise, and I really am digging the whole conservation theme of this game. But I wasn't sure I would like it that much, but I really, really enjoyed it. Like, I just really enjoyed, you know, deciding where to place these upgrade tokens onto my board, thinking about where the optimal place is for them to be placed, so that if I do that action, you know, will I get the things I need? Just, you know, thinking about where my stations are. So one thing I forgot to mention is when you rescue a fish, your ship always goes back to one of your stations. So you want to have more stations on this board so that you can spread them around. Because as you can see from this map, you will see that certain fish types are located in certain areas. So the orange fish are in this part of the world, and the blue fish are in this part of the world. The red fish are in this part of the world. So if you want to collect each fish type, you need to have stations spread around so that it will be easier for you to reach those fish. Because otherwise, you're going to spend a crap ton of time trying to get from one end of the board to the other in terms of movement. And again, you know, you're not getting a whole ton of movement, so you want to build stations in other parts of the world so that when you rescue a fish and your ship needs to go back to one of your stations, you can put it back at any station of yours that you want to. So it was really fun trying to strategize where to place my stations. I found myself wanting to build a station in a certain location, but then someone else got to it first. I found myself wanting to rescue certain fish, which someone else would get to first. You know, so I really enjoyed the competitiveness of it. I enjoyed trying to figure out, you know, the best tokens and where to place them and how to really optimize my actions. It's a thinky game. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. So again, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. So yeah, so definitely recommend this game if you are looking for a fun point-to-point movement game and a fun game in which you are just optimizing actions and then carrying out actions. So that was Hidden Arc. So again, thank you to the designer for giving me a review copy of this game, and I absolutely love Angela Riz's artwork. She is one of my favorite board game artists. I actually have the print that she did for the Board Game Geek art series. So she illustrated what in her own art style, the cover of the Isle of Cats. So I purchased that poster of hers. I really love her art style, and I also purchased a Harry Potter poster that she had, artwork that she had made on Etsy, which I really love. I really love her art style. So it's really cool. This game was really, really fun. I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, so definitely check out Hidden Arc if that seems like something that you would enjoy. So let's move on. Let's talk about Belgian Beers Race, the dice game. So this is a roll and write version of Belgian Beers Race. So this is a review copy, which I received at Essen, and I even got it signed by the designers, which is super cool. So for that reason, it means a lot to me. So I would try to pronounce these names, but I know I'm just going to butcher them. So I'm not going to pronounce the names because I'm really going to butcher it, but it's published by BYR Games, and it is for 1 to 4 players, and I believe that this is a 2023 game. So again, if you have seen my videos before, you know that I absolutely love the board game version of this game, and I think I've played it like maybe 3 times, and I'm someone who does not drink beer. I've never had a sip of alcohol in my entire life, but I really loved the board game because, even as someone who doesn't drink, I, of course, understand the effects of beer, right? And so I could see how thematic the game was and how well the game tied in the theme and the mechanics, even as someone who does not drink. So this game does come with a pad of sheets that you can fill out. So I went ahead and laminated a couple, and I made them double-sided. But last night when we played, I actually forgot to take erase markers with me, so we actually used some sheets with pen. So I played a 3-player game of this last night. So the rules are a little bit unclear at times, so I'm going to do my best as we understood the rules to explain them to you. So basically what you are going to do is the first player is going to roll all of these 12 dice. So you have different dice which represent different modes of transportation. So if I'm remembering correctly, the red die, I'll get that later. The red die is going by bike. The yellow die is public transportation, and the black die is hitchhiking. So you will see that the black die has higher values on it, like 5 and 4 and 3, and then the red die has some lower values on it, so that is biking, so you're not going to be biking as far. And then public transportation has values that go up to 4, so 1 to 4. So black has the highest value of 5. So you are going to have, and I'll throw out pictures because I'm going to need to, but each person is going to have one of these rings, and that will help you keep track of which brewery you are at. So you'll always just put this ring on top of where you're at, so it will help you to keep track just in case you manage to go through the same brewery again. So just simply by circling breweries, you're not going to be able to keep track of where you are. So you will need to use this ring in order to keep track of where you are on the board on your player sheet. There are going to be a number of cards. So you're going to have gold cards as well as some cheese cards. So there's 3 different types of public goal cards. There's red, black, and yellow. And, you know, some of them might be a little bit harder to achieve than others. So here are some examples of some red goal cards, and there will always be 3 face up. So if you manage to complete a goal card on your turn, you will take 1. There's always going to be 3 yellow goal cards face up, and there is a draw pile. So if someone takes 1, then obviously another one becomes available. And then black goal cards, and these are where you're just trying to hit a certain number of stations, breweries. And then each person is going to have a personal goal card. So each person starts with either a difficult or an easier level goal card. You will get to decide. So you'll be dealt 1 of each and then decide which of those you want to keep. So that is your personal hidden goal card. And then there's going to be 6 cheese cards. So randomly you will pick 6 of these cheese cards, and there will be tokens placed on them. So each cheese card is going to have a token which will indicate what number cheese it is, numbered 1 through 6. So there are these cheese tokens which will be placed on the cards. So for example, if one of the cheese tokens, I just dropped another one, I'll get that later too. So if one of the cheese tokens has this on it, then you know, one of the cheese cards has this token on it, then you know it's the cheese number 1. And that's important in case you decide to use a cheese ability, which is going to be some powerful ability to kind of help you. So your board is going to have different things on it. So let me show you your player sheet and the different tracks. So of course you will see all the different breweries on this sheet. And then underneath each brewery, if you see a blue icon, that means tasting. So that means you can taste a beer there. If you see a yellow one, that will allow you to purchase a beer. So you'll see your tasting and purchasing track down here. And if you taste, and I'll explain choosing dice and how you move on the board. But as I'm going through the different areas, I'm going to talk about how you unlock different amounts of points. So if you manage to, for example, taste a beer and buy a beer, you would fill in those 2 circles, and then you would fill in this circle. So now you've completed the first column. And then at the end of the game, you're always going to look at the circle that is uncovered to determine how many points you get. So for example, if you had all of these filled in, that means you would get this number of points because that is the uncovered one at the end of the game. However, you want to be careful because the more you drink and the more you buy, you will end up only getting to choose 2 dice instead of 3. So for example, if you if you tasted beers up to this level, then on your next turn, you will have to pick 1 fewer die. And then again, once you reach here. And when you reach this level, once you've tasted or purchased a certain number of beers where you're in the red zone, then you will always pick 1 less die on each subsequent turn. So, that is a risk you might want to take because it's worth more points if you manage to reach the track all the way down there. So here is the environment track. So if you ever spend a die to go somewhere that is of a higher value than necessary, so for example, let's suppose I wanted to get from number 7 to 8, it requires a 1. But if I had a die that was a value 3, that would give me 2 left over, so I would have to fill in the top bubble on the environment track. So you don't want to have carbon emissions because the more carbon emissions you have, the worse it is going to be for you because the more bubbles you fill in, you will end up getting to negative points. I didn't end up filling any of those bubbles. I always managed to get the exact number of spaces I needed. Again, cheese cards will give you special abilities. So if you want to use a cheese card, you will mark off which cheese card you used, and then you will mark off the top bubble in the cheese track. So the more of those special abilities you use, the worse it's going to be for you because you will end up getting negative points. This is simply the brewery track. Every time you visit a brewery, you will of course just mark in a bubble. And again, at the end of the game, whichever bubble is unmarked, the first unmarked bubble on your sheet is the number of points you will get for your breweries. These are special breweries. Throughout the game, you will see, throughout the sheet, you will see special breweries like this heart one or this hexagon one. So anytime you visit a special brewery, you will fill in the bubble. And again, once you filled in a column, you will fill in the bottom bubble. So if you manage to visit all of the special breweries in the first column, but not all of them in the second column, you will get that many points at the end of the game for that. And this is where you indicate your goal cards. If you completed a red goal and you picked it up on your turn, just put an X through it. And then once you have all 3 goal cards, that is when you can try to head back to Brussels in order to the center, town center, in order to try to end the game. Now, if you are in the town center, all of these are simply 1 space apart. So you are 1 space apart from each of these breweries. And if you are at one of the breweries at a town center, you are 1 space apart from any other brewery in that town center. So I believe that that is all of the tracks, and this is the award you will get. So if you were the first person to reach the town center and end the game, you will get 20 points. And once that happens, if another player reaches the town center within that round, so if someone triggered game end, and depending on what player they were, so suppose the first player reached the town center on their turn. The second and third player, if they managed to reach the town center in that round, then they would also get 20 points. However, if they reached it in the second round, they would get 10 points. And if they reached it in the third round, they would get 5 points. However, if you do not reach the town center within 3 rounds, once game end is triggered, then you will get -5 points. So you definitely want to try to make your way back to the town center, city center, once you see that game end is about to be triggered, because it can be really difficult to get there. Luckily, I managed just in the nick of time. So those are the various tracks. Now let's talk about how to play. So there are going to be 12 dice, and the first player who goes in the game is going to roll all 12. Now, if you ever do a re-roll, and I'll talk about that, you will only get to pick 2 dice. And I already talked about the penalties that you will get from buying or drinking a lot of beer, and how you will have to take 1 fewer dice. But let's suppose I was not the first player in this game, and someone selected their dice, and now you will always have the option of selecting 3 dice. So the dice you use for movement must be of the same color. So like, let's suppose I picked 2 red dice valued 2. That will give me 4 movement. And then if I pick a third dice, it would have to be a lower value. And that is what I can use to either taste or purchase a beer. So, the rule book was a little bit unclear, but we would select all 3 of our dice at the same time. So what we would do is we would look at the pool and we would decide, okay, which dice do we want? So for example, if there was a 4 and a 5 black available, I could take those. Now the rule book says that you have to select the lowest value dice that is available for your drinking and purchasing. So then I would look at the pool and see, okay, what low values are there? And if there's dice with numbers 1 on them, I would have to take 1 of those dice, and that is the die that I can then use for purchasing or drinking a beer. So that is how the dice work. So you're always going to pick 3 unless you re-rolled all of the dice because you didn't like what was available. If you pick up every player's dice and re-roll all of them, then you can only select 2. And again, you can only select 2 as well if you have the penalty from the buying and drinking hops track. So you're always going to get 3 unless you re-rolled or you have a penalty. And you can use, all of those dice for movement if you wanted to, or you can use some of those dice for purchasing and drinking beers. But the purchasing and drinking has to be done with lowest value dice. So when you are picking up your dice, you are going to try to pick up dice so that you will not suffer an environmental penalty, so that you don't end up having dice with more movement spaces on them than you're actually using to travel through Brussels, because that would be bad. So you don't want that to happen. So basically, that is really it. You're selecting 3 or 2 dice based on how many you can select. If you re-rolled or if you have a penalty, then you're going from brewery to brewery, just trying to fulfill different goals and and collect different beers and just go up different tracks. There is no comboing in this game. It's not like, oh, if you reached a certain point on a certain track, now I get to add another bubble somewhere else. It does not work that way in this game. The goals that you have, for example, this one, you want to visit these numbered breweries, and if you collected this goal card, that would give you 5 points at the end of the game. Let me just show you some of the other goal cards as an example. What are these cards? No, those are cheese cards. Yeah, so the yellow, there's all different kinds of goal cards. There are goal cards, here's a goal card, if you manage to reach 3 of those special breweries, you would get 5 points. So again, on your turn, if you see that you have completed a goal card, you can take that goal card, and the game end will be triggered once someone has collected a goal card of each color. Then they can head back to the city center if they want to. They don't have to head back if they don't want to. They can still go to other breweries trying to get more points if they choose, but once someone decides to go back to the city center after they have 3 goal cards, the game end will be triggered, and that's when you will look at all the various tracks to see how many points you get. There are some goal cards where you actually need to reach a certain level on a track in order to get points. So for example, let me find one if I can find one. Oh yeah, for this one. So for example, this one, you would have needed to reach the 4-point value on 2 tracks in order to complete this personal goal card. So if this person had these rows, these columns filled so that the 4 here was showing, and if they did the same on the bottom here so that the 4-pointer was showing wherever the 4-pointer is, I can't really see it from here. So yeah, then they would have completed this, and this would be worth 8 points for them at the end of the game. So certain goal cards, like the personal ones, may require you to, go up on certain tracks that you might want to focus on then. So the rules were a little bit confusing, and, the scheme is not yet available in America as far as I know. So, there was very few posts on Board Game Geek for rules clarification. So we kind of, every one of us who played this game last night, there was 3 of us, we'd all played the main board game. So we all had an understanding of how the main board game, the actual board game, works. So we were able to apply kind of our knowledge of that game to this game to see where the designers were kind of going with this in terms of rules, if we had a little bit of confusion on any of the rules. So, one of the rule clarifications that we came up with was that you can, move through multiple breweries on one turn. Like, you don't need to stop and taste and buy a beer if you don't want to. Like, you can use all of your dice for movement if you want to. So you don't have to pick a die in order to taste or drink or buy a beer if you don't want to. So in that case, I'm a bit unsure whether you would still be required to pick a lower value die. I'm guessing not, because when you're tasting or purchasing a beer, it says you need to select the lowest value die that is available if you want to do that, which can then affect the next player. So like, let's suppose you select some dice, and a couple players have selected some dice, and they've also selected some dice for tasting and drinking. Now you have higher value dice left over. That could affect a player in terms of, trying to reach a certain area, because now they might suffer an environmental penalty if they simply just want to move, but now they have more movement than they need. So, the lower numbers can be useful for moving in smaller areas. So what happened at the end of the game was, like, I was trying to make my way back to Brussels, and I was in an area where I would need like a 1 movement or a 2 movement, and it wouldn't be there. There would be like these higher numbers, but then I would have stuff left over. There's going to be situations that come up where you kind of need to like really think, okay, like, should I re-roll and then get only 2 dice? And then on the next turn, if I do that, will I, have enough dice to reach back to Brussels? So there is some thinking involved in this game, which I liked. It's a very basic roll and write game in which you are just basically trying to reach certain areas and complete certain goal cards. And it did remind me a lot of the board game, but I do think that the board game is probably better than the dice game of this. But the dice game was enjoyable. I enjoyed it. And another player said that, you know, if I wanted to play it again, he would play it again. He does not feel the need to purchase it, but he would be happy to play it again. The third player said no. She said that she would not play this again, but I enjoyed it. I think it was a fun little roll and write game. The solo mode, from what I read on the forums, the rules are really incomprehensible for the solo mode. Like whoever played the solo mode and made some posts about it on the forums was really struggling. So, you know, if the designers of this are watching, you know, I would advise them to maybe go over the solo rules and come up with an addendum that they can upload in case people need to refer to that, or an addendum with some questions that people have asked on the forums that they would have questions about before this becomes available in the US, because I think that there are going to be a lot of questions that people will have once it's available in the US. So yeah, so that was Belgian Beers Dice. So let's move on. So let's move on to games that I am backing. So I feel like I've gone Kickstarter crazy and it's not good. So I'm still backing Awkward Guess to the Berwick cases. Still backing Garden Geckos, and both of those end on May 1st. So Awkward Guess is 27 euros plus shipping. Garden Geckos is 60 Canadian dollars plus shipping, I believe. And then I backed this game called Bloom Chasers, delightful 3D game of flowers and wits. And it just looks so pretty. It's like a 3D game in which you're building up like trees with, you know, these components that kind of look like Legos. It's $45. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. This is just too much. And recently the Kickstarters for Bebop, Shuffle and Swing, and Cat Blues, that ended, and I had kept my pledge for all three games, which was $137. Before that, River Valley Glassworks ended, which was $93. And in the end, I did end up backing Phoenix Farm, which, you know, again, it's, you know, it's a small publisher, and a friend of mine, I asked him what he thought, and so he kind of convinced me that, yeah, if this is a game I'm interested in, I should probably back it on Kickstarter. So I ended up doing that. So I ended up backing Phoenix Farm. So this is a lot of money. This is like way more money than I've spent on board games in quite some time, I feel like. So yeah, so I don't know what to do. So if you're watching this, you know, please give me some feedback. Like, is Bloom Chasers a game that you think I should back or not? I don't know. So is that something that might be available in retail? Maybe I should just wait until it's available in retail. It has 13 days to go. Holy crap, it's made a lot of money. It's made $191,225. It had a $10,000 goal. It's got over 4,000 backers. So yeah, I mean, again, it's like you're picking different kinds of cards and you're adding to a tree, and it's just really pretty. It's just like a 3D like tree that you're building up, and it's very pretty. So I don't know what to do. I'm like, I'm spending too much money. And then I'm backing Epistocracy at the $5 level, just at the pledge manager level. Just I'm actually going to reach out to the creator of the game. I had seen this game being demoed at one of the conventions I attended last year. I don't remember which one. And one of my friends, he knows the designer. So I think I might reach out to the designer and see if I can just get a review copy of the game and give coverage of it, because it seems like a game just seriously up my alley. Like Epistocracy, like, you know, if I can't get a review copy of this, then I would rather cancel something else and and back this, because, you know, this is like very reminiscent of like Pride and Prejudice and Downton Abbey and stuff like that, and it's gotten really good reviews. Like Rado gave it a really good review, and the designer did the artwork and designed the game herself, which I think is just super cool. And the artwork is just really just so pretty. It's just so delightful. Yeah, so the deluxe edition of this game is $125, and it's a $180 manufacturer's suggested retail price value. So yeah, so anyway, so I don't know, just give me your thoughts on all of this if you have any thoughts, because I could really use the feedback, because otherwise I will go broke. So a recent arrival I'll show you guys is the Fog Escape from Paradise. So this is a game which I had covered for its Kickstarter. So this is this was part of my contract to receive this game. So this was a game that I really enjoyed. You know, it was also one of those games that I was a little bit unsure when I played how much I would like it, but I really enjoyed it. And you know, there's a lot in this box. So this is the deluxe version, but basically you have a board and there's going to be different kinds of terrain tiles. You're going to be making a larger board composed of these smaller sections kind of, and you're going to have different kinds of terrain tiles, like different kinds of obstacles. You're going to have different people who will have different movement abilities and different kinds of attack abilities, and you're trying to get them through the island, through the obstacles, onto the boats, into their locations that they're supposed to be on in those boats. So yeah, so this is a deluxe version, so it comes with a lot of stuff, and honestly it would kind of be a little bit difficult to set up, I think, because I don't remember too much, but I'll just show you some of the components here. So there's going to be like these different rings, and you're going to have the different people slot into these rings. So I'll just show you an example. Let me find an example of a person that would fit in here. So for example, like this. So these fit right in here, and you're going to be moving these people around, and yeah, just trying to get them on boats in the order. I believe that there was a certain order that they needed to be on the boats as well, so for you to score them. So yeah, so that is what this game is, and this is the deluxe version, so it comes with like the 3D printed components for some of the landscapes, so like the bushes, and then there's like, I think this was just some rocks or volcanic rock or something like that, and then there's some driftwood. So yeah, so those components are pretty cool. I would like to play this at some time, so if my gaming buddies are watching this, let me know if this is something you'd be interested in playing. I do think it's going to be a bit of a table hog though, so I'm not sure it would actually fit in the table at our game store where we play, but who knows, because it does seem like a bit of a table hog. So yeah, so this arrived recently, which I'll put away later because it's gonna take a bit of time for me to figure out how to put it back in the box. So let's move on. So let's just talk about some updates, I guess. So a cat update. So a long time ago, I had mentioned an injured cat to you guys, an orange and white injured cat who had been hit by a car. And this was like a couple months ago, I think. Finally, we were able to trap this cat. Well, not me personally, but the rescue organization I work with. And he was looking worse than ever. Like, this cat disappeared for a while. He had disappeared for a couple weeks. I was so worried about him, had no idea where he went. And then he made a reappearance looking worse than ever, skinnier than ever, still injured. And the rescue organization was able to trap him, thank God. I'm so happy about that. So, because all the other cats that I, feed, they look relatively healthy and happy. But this poor cat, I think he was a dumped cat. So I think he was someone's pet who had been dumped at this colony because they must have seen, oh, look at, there's cats living here, so we don't want our cat anymore, so we'll dump him here. And because he was previously a pet, he had no survival skills, and he was in really bad shape because the other cats that live there, they have the survival skills to survive in these colonies. This poor cat did not. So thank God he was rescued, he was trapped, and he is going to hopefully get the treatment he needs, and then he will find a home, hopefully. They do want me, the rescue organization said that they would really want me to learn how to trap so that I can start trapping on my own. And I was really concerned about that. I have like a full-time day job, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know when I would be able to trap. It already takes me an hour out of my day to go to these colonies, to feed them, to give them fresh water, clean up garbage when I see it, in the winter months, it would take even more time because I would shovel the areas completely so that they don't have to go trudging through snow to get to the food. I would clean off the tops of their shelters if there was snow on them at all the colonies. So in the winter months, it would take a lot more time actually. So I have a full-time day job, and it takes an hour already just to go feed all of these cats and then trapping. And then it's like, I have 2 cats at home. What would I do if I trap cats? So they said if I learn how to trap cats, I would just be trapping them and then giving the cats to them, and then they would do the rest of the work. So the rescue organization, they would take the cats from me that same day that I trapped them, and then they would, take them to the hospitals to get their shots and then do all of the rest of the work. And then if the cat is going to be released, they would release the cat themselves, or I would go pick up the cat to release myself. So that's doable. So I'm like, okay, I can trap once in a while. So I'm actually going to be taking a course to learn how to trap the cats. And then some of the people offered for me to tag along when they do some trapping, so I can just see firsthand how it's done. So that's something I'm going to be doing. Speaking of cats, My cat Toffee, my basement is unfurnished. I have my washing machine and dryer down there. It's, not even heated. It's just, just a regular basement that's kind of used for storage, not very pleasant looking. So my cat Toffee likes to go down in the basement. So I always crack open the door a little bit for him so he can go in the basement. And he's previously caught a mouse from there before. And then last night he brought up a mouse, which then Zaytoon decided to grab onto. So Zaytoon grabbed onto this poor little mouse in his mouth. He's growling so much. I'm like, I didn't realize until I saw that he was growling a lot that he had the mouse in his mouth. And then I quickly went and I picked up Zaytoon so he would drop the mouse, and I picked up this cute little mouse. He's the cutest, littlest, tiniest little deer mouse. He is so adorable. So I examined his body, and this is the first time I've actually touched a mouse. Like I've never I've touched a mouse before, but not like touch. Like the previous mouse that Toffee had one time tried killing, I didn't touch him personally. I managed to pick up Toffee. He ended up dropping the mouse, and then I don't know where the mouse went after that. So it went somewhere in my house. I don't know where. But this time, this mouse was really tiny. He seemed like a little baby to me. I managed to pick him up. I was petting him and I was examining his body to see if he had any puncture wounds. He did not have any puncture wounds. So I put him into a shoebox with some tissue. I got some birdseed from my garage, put that in there for him because I know mice like birdseed. I got a little shallow dish and put some water in the dish for him. And then I covered the shoebox and I made sure that there were some holes. I, of course, punched the holes in the cover before putting that on the box so I wouldn't accidentally hit the mouse. So I made sure that there were air holes, and I put the box in my bathroom, my downstairs bathroom, and closed the door. And yeah, he spent the night there. And this morning I checked up on him. He's doing much better today. So he's, running around. I lifted up the lid and he even jumped out of the box, and then I had to put him back in the box because I don't know what to do with him now. So I, tried finding out if there's like a rescue organization that can take him in, and I contacted one. I hope that they will get back to me. People were like, oh, you should release him outside. Don't put him back in your basement. So I'm like, okay. My mom even called me and she's like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you taking care of a mouse? Just throw him outside. I'm like, he's just a little baby. He's so cute. So anyway, so I then looked up what kind of temperatures mice can survive in. And, these days it gets cold at night. So I'm just kind of hesitant to put him outside right now. He looks better. I said I did not want a pet mouse, but now I'm wondering if I should just go buy him like a little cage or something and then just keep him until it's warmer and then put him outside when it's warmer. And then my cats can just have a pet mouse in the meantime. I don't know. So if you have any experience with mice, let me know what to do with this poor little mousey who's still in the shoebox. Maybe I'll go to the pet store later today and see how much a little mouse container, whatever costs, and we'll figure it out. So cute little mousey still in my bathroom, and my cats figured out that the mouse is in the bathroom, so they've been sitting in front of the bathroom, like just rolling around in front of the door, trying desperately to get inside. But yeah, not happening. So that is my cat mouse story. Palestine. So the big thing right now is all these protests. So the big thing in the US is all these protests around campuses in the US. So, it seems like a repeat of Vietnam. So when students were protesting the Vietnam War as being very unethical, which today we realize it is, right? Today we can see all the war crimes that were committed in Vietnam. And today we can see all the war vets who have severe PTSD from Vietnam. In fact, I had started reading this one book a few months ago, which I really need to pick up and start reading again. It was Your Body Keeps the Score. It was like how trauma affects your body. And at the very beginning of the book, she basically just talks about a war vet from Vietnam who witnessed atrocities. And because of the trauma he witnessed, he then went on to commit these horrible atrocities himself. He then went on to rape women, kill their families, kill, their children, and do really horrific things. And he had a wife and kids back home, and here he is suffering from trauma because of what he witnessed in Vietnam, and then doing these horrific war crimes himself because he wanted to enact revenge on the people that he thought killed his war buddy, his friend, his comrade. So really horrific, like the things that people do when they are traumatized and suffering from PTSD. Absolutely horrific. So I never finished this book. I really should, because it talks about how trauma affects your body. So yeah, I mean, just, so there's people all around the US now, students all around the US protesting the genocide in Gaza. And what is happening, we are seeing not only students get arrested, but professors as well, and violently arrested. Like, so people who are anti-protest, who are the protests which are anti-genocide, they're labeling the protests as violent. And they're like, oh, look at these pro-Hamas protesters. These protesters are not pro-Hamas. They're anti-genocide. There is a difference. Most of us pro-Palestinians do not support violence. Like, we do not support violence of any kind, most of us, So these are not pro-Hamas protests. These are anti-genocide protests. And most of the violence that you see, like all of the violence that you see happening from these encampments at universities across America, is being done by the police that is being called in. So you see police violently throwing people to the ground, violently arresting them, and just, treating them very, very badly. It's just absolutely horrific. Students are getting banned from campuses. They're, being told that they're getting expelled. It's, a problem. But like, think back to Vietnam. Think back to when students were protesting Vietnam. And back then, all your conservatives were like, oh yeah, like, look at these students. Obviously they're wrong. But years later, we see that no, the students were right. The students are right. Look at what the students are protesting. When you see mass movements like this, know if you are against the students, then you're on the wrong side of history, quite frankly. So if you support these students, then you're on the right side of history. So we are witnessing history as it's being made. And again, like, how were things like Vietnam allowed to happen? How was the Holocaust allowed to happen? When people stand up and protest these events, and they're looked at as the ones being crazy, as the ones, who are supporting the wrong side, when in fact they're the ones who are on the right side. It's the protesters who are protesting a genocide who are on the right side of history right now. So what we are seeing right now across America is very inspiring. I'm so inspired by these students. I'm so proud of them. It kind of makes me wish I was a student myself, so that I could join them and take part in these protests and really stand up for something and, put actions to my words. But I put actions to my words in other ways. So I do attend protests, not on campuses, because I'm not a student, but I attend protests and marches. I donate, and I try to raise awareness on Instagram and in my videos here. So I do what I can, But I'm so proud of these students, and they're making history. It's really, really just inspiring. And Israel has not ceased bombing. It's gone all out on Rafah again. Atrocities have been committed. A huge mass grave was unearthed, and there's evidence of people having been buried alive, like hundreds of people who were buried alive. Like, their wrists are tied up. There's the evidence shows that they were buried alive. There were people who were taken from the hospital who still had tubes in them, and they were buried with these tubes in them. Like, just absolutely horrific. Like, again, with everything that's come out, if you still don't see what's happening, then you are willfully blind. And I would question your sense of humanity if, seeing all these atrocities happen to people in Palestine, if it doesn't stir something inside of you, then maybe you don't see these people as human. Maybe you have given into the propaganda which is meant to dehumanize Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims. And if that's the case, then if something like that happened to me, if you don't know me personally, my death would mean nothing to you as well. Like, I'm just another Muslim. I'm just another person of Arab and Iranian descent. Like, my death would literally mean nothing to people who have given into this propaganda and don't view Muslims and people of the Middle East as human. So, if these atrocities don't stir anything inside of you, don't make you feel queasy, don't make you feel upset, like, question your own sense of humanity and question why that is, because there are some incredibly horrific images and videos coming out of Gaza, and have been for over 200 days now. It's just insane. It's over 200 days and with no end in sight. So that is your Palestine-Gaza update for this week. So let's move on. Actually, no, I'm not done. I have one more thing to say about Palestine. you would think that all of the people, like, again, like Suzanne Sheldon, Eric Lang, Rodney Smith, and all of the people who are super vocal about human rights issues and have really given shit to other people for not being vocal about the same issues or the same causes that they have been vocal about in the past, you would think that maybe they would try to save face at this point and say something with all of the stuff that is happening in America. Now, I know that Rodney Smith and Eric Lang are Canadian, but they have made lots of commentary about the politics of America before. Eric Lang has been hugely outspoken about Black Lives Matter. He's hugely outspoken about trans lives and how, you know, the US government is basically eroding trans rights. So they have been hugely outspoken about issues in America before. So it doesn't matter that they're Canadian, quite frankly. You know, I would think that maybe to save face, they would have said something by now, but nope, they have not said a single word about this genocide. So the next time that there is an issue in the US that they are extremely vocal about and they are upset because people are buying games from a publisher that doesn't seem to care about the issue that they care about, remind them how they were dead silent during this genocide. Remind them how they remained dead silent as millions of people march for the Palestinians, as countless students are in encampments across universities across America, and how they are still dead silent. Like, nothing is causing them to speak up. They are still Zionist shills. They are still sellouts who do not want to upset their Zionist friends, their Zionist publishers and designers. That is the definition of a sellout. Like, hello, that is what sellouts are like. So yes, so they are fucking sellouts, and, you know, apparently they don't want to save any face whatsoever and haven't said a single word. So yeah, is there any surprise? No, there is no surprise. Like, you know, they've really shown the board gaming community who they are, and the next time they try to guilt anyone into not caring about or not speaking up about the issues that they speak up about, like, throw this back in their face. Be like, really, where were you during the genocide where over 40,000 innocent Palestinians were killed, like brutally, inhumanely killed in war crimes? Where were you? What did you say? You said nothing. So yeah, so just wanted to, you know, update you guys on the silence in this community and the hypocrisy of certain people in the board game industry. So now we will move on. So I have 2 questions of the week for you, and they are inspired by 2 of the games that I played and talked about this week. So the first question of the week is inspired by Belgian Beers Race. So I want to know what other board games have been implemented into a roll and write or draw and write version, flip and write version rather. So what other, like, actual board games have been implemented into a roll and write or flip and write version, and if you can think of any, is the flip and write or roll and write version actually good and worth playing on its own? So let me know. So that is question number 1. And question number 2 is inspired by Hidden Arc. Now, Hidden Arc is a game designed by a designer who I had never ever heard of before. I had never even heard of this publisher before. So Tobias Hall, and is published by All or None Games. So relatively unknown designer, relatively unknown publisher, but I was super impressed with this game. It was really fun. I thought it was a really good game. It was really well balanced. Just really enjoyed this game. So it was just a really pleasant surprise. I want to know what other games exist by relatively unknown designers and unknown publishers that have really pleasantly surprised you. Please put those titles in the comments below, because I would really love to find out. Like, it's just really just a nice surprise when you play a game that's by someone who maybe doesn't have like a huge publishing company and doesn't have the funds to publish a big game like other publishers do, yet the game is so good and it's really worth purchasing, I would say, even though I received a review copy of it, and really worth playing. Like, I was just really impressed with this game. So I would like to know which other relatively unknown designers and publishers have published really good games. So leave those titles below. And again, which other roll and write and flip and write versions of board games based on actual board games are good that you have played that you would recommend. So leave those titles in the comments below as well. And until next time, bye.